Joss is a clinical psychologist. From the age of 16, she grappled with undiagnosed epilepsy. Although she didn't have convulsions, her seizures made her do some very strange things.
I was on a family holiday in France and I was playing tennis with my dad and my boyfriend, and I suddenly dropped my tennis racket and started running around the tennis courts backwards. They were understandably concerned, particularly given that I didn't remember. So I went to the GP when we got back from that holiday.
The second doctor Joss saw suspected epilepsy and sent her for an MRI scan at her local hospital that revealed a tumour in her right temporal lobe.
They told me that it was benign and it wasn't cancerous, so I was put on anti-epileptic medication, which sadly made things actually a bit worse. So I was referred over to the National Hospital for specialist input.
Joss came for treatment at the National Hospital for Neurology and Neurosurgery in London. It specialises in diseases of the brain, spine and nervous system, and gives cutting-edge care to patients like Joss, thanks to an amazing charity called the National Brain Appeal.
We couldn't function without the aid of the National Brain Appeal. They funded some of the major advances we have here in neurosurgery at Queen Square, particularly interventional MRI, and the services for brain tumour patients, particularly the new brain tumour unit, the Molly Lane Fox unit, and without their help, we'd be lost.
After extensive tests, Andrew confirmed that Joss's tumour was causing her epilepsy.
Like most people with epilepsy, Joss tried medication first, but unfortunately a third of people don't respond to medication, and uncontrolled epilepsy is a life-threatening disease, and so if you can't control seizures with medication, then we have to look at alternative ways like surgical treatments of curing epilepsy.
I had a DNET, which is a dysembryoplastic neuroepithelial tumour, but don't quote me on the pronunciation of that. And in my right temporal lobe, which is the part of the brain that controls visual memory storage, so things like directions, places, faces.
To minimise the risks of surgery, Andrew used the cutting-edge technology of the interventional MRI operating theatre to map the route he'd take into Joss's brain to remove the tumour, and program this information into the theatre's navigation system. It's a sat-nav for the brain.
Thanks to the National Brain Appeal, we have the first interventional MRI suite in the United Kingdom for neurosurgery. Interventional MRI essentially means that we operate in an MRI scanner. So during the operation, you can stop at any point and do a scan and see if you've removed all of what you were intending to remove. And if you don't get all of the tumour out, then patients' chances of being seizure-free are nowhere near as good as if you get all the tumour out. So there it is before the operation, very extensive tumour. And then immediately, when we've removed it in the operation, we can show that it's all out before we ever close the patient's head.
Joss's recovery was carefully managed by specialist staff at the Molly Lane Fox unit, the hospital's dedicated brain tumour ward and the first of its kind, which exists thanks to the National Brain Appeal.
I haven't had a single seizure since, so I'm now 6 years seizure-free, and coming off medication was a big milestone, which is fantastic.
Since her treatment at the National Hospital, Joss has done a doctorate and set up her own clinical psychology practice. She's also dedicated herself to raising money for the National Brain Appeal.
I contacted them and said, well, I'd like to climb Kilimanjaro for you. 12.5 million people in the UK have a neurological condition, and it's services like the National that will help those people. So the National Brain Appeal is doing hugely important work. If it hadn't been for the National Brain Appeal, I wouldn't have received the wonderful care that I did, and actually my life would be very different now.
With your help, the National Brain Appeal can keep funding the latest technologies to help people like Joss live the best life possible. Thank you.